everybody, it's Willow from Forever Mystical. Forever Mystical is my YouTube channel, it's my Facebook page, and it's my Etsy shop. And today I want to talk to you about cauldrons. There are many different cauldrons out there. There are from the very small that you can burn incense and stuff to the little bit larger that you could create a potion in, or also burn incense and herbs. And then there's the very large one, which is enough to actually make a full cup of tea in. All of my cauldrons, however, I only use to burn incense and herbs and resins and things like that in. So this is the one I used to use before our circle disbanded and I moved away. So this was the one that we would use in circle when we all got together. I still use it from time to time, but mainly I use a smaller one such as this for my personal altar, as it is smaller and takes less place. Now the first thing we want to talk about a cauldron is quality. A cauldron should be made out of cast iron. A cauldron made out of any other material other than cast iron, in my opinion, and this is only in my opinion, is not a good choice. At least it's not a good choice to me. Cast iron is, designed to absorb the heat. I have rarely seen a cast iron fail, and when I have seen one fail, it is from user error. So another thing is when you do purchase a cast iron cauldron, you want to make sure it has weight to it. That tells you it is of, a good quality. I did buy one about this size a while back, and it was so light. It was a little bit bigger than this one, and it didn't even weigh as much as this little one, and that kind of concerned me because it was, so light. So I wasn't comfortable using it, and I wound up not using it, and eventually just using it for something else until eventually I just discarded it. So in my opinion, I believe a cauldron should be cast iron, and it should be of a good heavy weight. Now, I have been asked, do you season your cauldrons? And I have to say, yes, you should. And the simplest way is give it a good washing, dry it really, really well, coat it in a little bit of olive oil, and pop it in your oven at 350 for about, I don't know, a half hour to an hour, whatever suits you. Do you have to do this on a continuous basis? Like every time you use it, once a month? No, I would say at least a couple of times a year you should season your cauldron, and it will last you for many, many years to come. So, going over with a cauldron from there, I want to show you the proper way that I use a cauldron and how I was taught. The first thing is you need a tile. Some people call them a trivet. It's got cork on the back. You can also use one of those 4-inch by 4-inch or 3-inch by 3-inch tiles. You can also pick something like this up at the Dollar Tree for $1.25, and it'll work well. What this does, again, it helps absorb the heat, but it also protects the surface underneath, such as your altar cloth, your tabletop, and so on. So you would want to make sure that your cauldron will sit inside and on that tile nicely. You don't want it to where it looks like it's going to hang off. That serves nothing and can be dangerous, as your cauldron can flip. So make sure your cauldron sits soundly inside the perimeters of that tile. I always like to make sure that I have about 1 inch from the leg to the edge. So this is a good fit for this cauldron. Some cauldrons come with a lid. I do prefer ones that come with a cast iron lid, in case if for some reason I am interrupted and I have to put the candles out and I have to put the cauldron out, I can cover that cauldron and it is going to be safe to smother out and cool down. Even with the littler one, I saved a lid off of an old cauldron to use on this one to also be able to extinguish it. It doesn't quite fit. It sits down more on the inside, but that is okay as it will still do the job. So let's talk about firing up the cauldron. Inside the cauldron, some people can burn incense cones and incense sticks if that's what you prefer. But if you prefer to burn resins and herbs, you are going to have to use a charcoal round. And you can pick these up at any metaphysical shop, spiritual shop, or smoke shop. And so it's just a charcoal disc that you put on fire and you put down inside of your cauldron to put herbs on. We will talk about this in just a moment. The first thing that you want to do is make sure your cauldron is ready to be used and it's not full of a bunch of leftover debris and stuff. So the first thing is you want to add sand to your cauldron. Now what the sand does is the sand helps absorb the heat, evenly distributes it, which also protects the cauldron, protects the tile and the surface underneath, but it also protects against cauldron failure. Cauldrons can become extremely hot. I've seen them to the point where they look like they were shades lighter, like if you ever seen a potbelly stove, how it turns to a reddish tint. I've seen them to where they was almost to that point, and at that point a cauldron can fail. That's the reason why we use sand. So with sand, I like to put in a couple. I normally put in about 4 spoonfuls, and this is a teaspoon. I normally put in about 4 of these, maybe 5. It just depends on what I'm getting here. Okay, so I think I like to put in a couple more because the belly of this cauldron is really kind of, there we go. There we go. That is nice there. So I wound up putting 5 inside of this one. Now I'm going to make sure it's evenly evenly spread out. I think I like to put a little bit more as this is a fat belly cauldron. So I just want to put in a few more. And you can use your sand a few times before, you decide to change it out. I normally do. I use it about 3 or 4 times, just depending, before I'll go and change it out. Any large debris or anything in it, I always remove it before using again. Okay, now I think I am comfortable with what's in here. It's about halfway maybe. So now I've got that spread out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my charcoal disc. This is a tool that is used to hold the charcoal as such. And what this does is this stops you from getting burned. Charcoal can have saltpeter in it, which can help it catch fire really quickly, and you'll see it going all the way across, little sparks. So it can burn you very quickly. So the charcoal clamps helps protect you. So you want to light your charcoal. Now it may take a second for it to really catch. I do suggest you use a lighter for this and not a candle, and not, you can see the little sparks that I was talking about, and not matches, because you have to hold it there for a moment or so for it to really get going. See, it's going to take a little bit for it to actually catch. You can see the saltpeter in it flaking a little bit. There we go. I think it's actually starting now. you can, I don't know how well, no, you can't see it, but it is starting to come across. So we're going to have to give that a second to come across. Some people likes to wait until it turns to a gray to show it is really lit. Right now it is sparking across the charcoal like I told you it would do, showing that it is spreading evenly. You have to be careful because it might go out depending on the charcoal that you're using. Normally with this brand, Swift Light, I've never had a problem. No, it is still lit. Let's see if I can help that along a little bit. So on your charcoal, you can burn herbs and you can burn resins. If you're going to do something like using a bay leaf for a prosperity spell or something, you can burn it in your cauldron. If you're doing a petition spell that needs to be burned, you can also burn that in your cauldron, which is a safer way of doing it. Okay. Okay, I think I've got that a nice lit. Now when I place mine in, I place mine with the divot up. If you look at a charcoal round, let me get another one here. So if you look at a charcoal round, it has a divot on one side, right here. It has a little divot, and on the other side, it's like a bowl. I always put the bowl down inside of the sand. I leave the little divot up, and that's where I can place my resins or my herbs. Okay, so that is coming along quite nicely. And if you need to adjust your charcoal, always use your charcoal tongs. Never, never put your hand in there. Don't be fooled by that because it can turn very hot very fast. Okay, so from there, you are now ready to add a pinch of herbs. Or you can place a resin. You can hear it sparking. It is catching nicely. But something that I like to do when I'm doing spell work, I do like to use a mixture of herbs that corresponds with the work that I'm doing. But I'm constantly having to pause to do this bit, to keep adding herbs into the cauldron. So one thing that I came up with is I created an item called a Cauldron Bloom and a Cauldron Bomb. Now, this is a Cauldron Bloom, and I will do a video on how I create those, and it has the herbs in the bottom. Now, I will set this on the little divot of that charcoal round, and if you look at it, you can see it looks like a little bloom. Now, I've never had a problem using one of these. It normally will burn up to even of the cauldron, and and just fall down inside of the cauldron and more or less just go out. But another thing that I like about them is, should I have to stop, I can easily put the rest, just push the rest back down in with the lid on it, and that will smother it out. So this is going to take a second for this to really get going. But one thing that the Cauldron Bloom replaces is it replaces having to do this. Now, the next one, if you're doing some spell work, now one bloom will last you through most of your spell work. And if it doesn't, all you have to do is just take off the flower part that didn't burn, set it aside, and then put another bloom inside, and it's going to do it. It's going to carry it all the way through. You're not going to have to pause after every few words to have to do this, or pause after every cast to have to keep adding more into your cauldron. Now this one here is called a Cauldron Bomb, and the reason being is because it has like 3 times more herbs or resins than what is in this bloom. Mostly I don't use resins in the blooms or in the bombs. I mostly just use herbs, as resins can sit on the charcoal all to themselves. And this one will last you for a continual ritual. So this one is called a bomb, and it would sit like this inside your cauldron. And this one is called a cauldron bloom. The reason why I call them a bloom is look at the top. They look like a carnation, you know, like a carnation flower. So that's the reason why it's called a cauldron bloom. Now this is starting to get going. You can see where it's starting on the bottom. So I'm going to sit it there, and you are going to start seeing the smoke rising up from this cauldron bloom. So to recap a few things, there are different sizes from the small to a medium to a large. Then you've got really large, and you know, so on and so forth. The one thing that you want to look for is to make sure it's got a good belly on it. Okay, you want to make sure it's got a good belly on it, and then you want to make sure it's got a good weight. Check the seams. Make sure the seams are good. These are not, I can tell you right now, these are, you know, welded, pressed together, whichever, what have you. And you want to make sure that those welds and seams are done really, really well. You want to make sure it's got a good weight to it, you know, because it absorbs a lot of heat. So make sure it's got a good weight, and it's not something that's going to be blown over easily or kicked over easily or toppled over easily. Always use a coaster or a trivet under it. I prefer the porcelain or the ceramics because they can absorb heat and hold the heat to protect the surface down below. Make sure you have about an inch clearance all the way around, no less than a ½ inch. And that just stabilizes your cauldron. If it doesn't fit properly, the cauldron can topple over. Remember, your cauldron has 3 feet, so it is like, you know, sitting on a tripod, and it can topple if it's uneasy. So always make sure it's sitting flat and level with plenty of clearance around it. What you want to do is fill it up at least 2/3 of the way or 1/3 of the way with sand. What the sand does is it absorbs a lot of the heat, and it evenly distributes it. So, and it protects the cauldron from becoming fire red, to which can cause cauldron failure. Your charcoal round, you want to use your charcoal thongs to hold your round while you are lighting it. I always suggest use a lighter, not matches or a candle, as it can cause you to burn because your charcoal round will spark. Once you get it going, place it in the center of your sand. I always place the bowl part downward, like a charcoal round has a bowl part. I place it downward. In the center is a little divot. I place that upward, and that's where I'll set my cauldron bloom or my herbs or my resins. It's always best to have one that has a handle. I never suggest you move it once it is going and it's hot, but should you have no choice, it's always best to have one that has a handle, and it's always best to have one that have a lid. In case if you have to put this out, you can just smother it down in there and put it out. You can see now it's really starting to go. So, you know, that is the suggestions that I have for you, that, you know, if always work on a solid surface such as a table or your altar top. Make sure it's sturdy and it's not wobbly because you are dealing with fire here. Make sure it's of a good quality. That's the most important thing, and it's got that weight to it. Always check the seams to make sure it is a nice assembled product. Use sand to help to protect your cauldron and to distribute the heat. You can use, you know, you can put herbs directly on the charcoal, or you can create a cauldron bloom or a cauldron bomb, and I will show you in another video how I came up with those and how I create those. Now, like I said, this is one that I used on occasion. I have used it the past couple of times for full moons and new moons, so I want to show you what I have in it. You can see where I have burned cauldrons, and I have burned the, oh Lord help me, I have burned the blooms and the bombs inside of here, and this is what's left. Now, I do not throw this away. I do remove the unburned top if there's one, and I throw it away. But as for this, I don't. I had a mortar and pestle that broke about a year and a half ago, and I saved the pestle part. And what I'm going to do inside this cauldron is I'm going to smash all of the remaining remnants in here, along with the sand and the charcoal that's still there. I'm just going to smash it all up. I'm going to grind it, and then I'll show you the reason why. Well, that went a lot easier. Now, some things that I can't grind, which may accumulate to the top, I like to take, where did I put my little, did I leave it in there? I did. I'll take my little spoon, and I'm just going to, the stuff that didn't, I'm going to rake off the top. The stuff that didn't, that I can't smash up, I'm just going to take off the top. I have no use for it, so there we go. So I'm going to set that aside. Then what I'm going to do is I saved an old pickle jar. Always save your old jars. You'll always have a purpose for them. And I'm going to take this, and I'm slowly going to put it down inside this jar. The sand, the leftover ash from the charcoal and charcoal bits, herb bits and burned herbs, you know, just all that. Yeah, I always make a little bit of a mess. So there you go. I've added all of that into this jar. You know, and the scrapings from my cauldron is in here as well. And this has just become the start of my black salt. It has a lot of burnt herbs in it, burnt ashes, leftover herbs ground up, you know, the burnt sand, the burnt charcoal. This is perfect. I may add some other protection herbs and stuff to it and banishment herbs, but I'm making my own black salt. I can use it on my altar. I can use it around the perimeter of my home. You know, or I can carry it in a small vial on me as personal protection. So always save what you burn in your cauldron. You know, that's the reason why I like the sand, is because if you don't use the sand and you just put the charcoal on the bottom, number one, you're really risking damaging your cauldron and possibly other things. But if you put resins in it, then that becomes very nasty. It sticks to the inside of your cauldron. You can hardly get it loose, and then you got to keep constantly trying to scrape it. You know, with the mortar and pestle, I went around the insides of the mortar and pestle and knocked anything loose that could be there, and that allowed me to, you know, take those remnants of the cauldron and add them that fell into the black salt and leave them in the black salt. So that's how you create black salt. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that this was a helpful video for you. If you would, please give me the thumbs up, share my video, please make a comment below, you know, if you like this video, and also if there's other subjects that you would like to see a video made on. And subscribe to my channel if you will, and ring that notification bell. Thank you for joining me. Stay forever mystical, and blessed be.